Hi, I'm the Octopus Lady, you're watching Alien Ocean, and let's talk about coconut crabs today, shall we? Or they're sometimes called robber crabs, but put a pin in that, we'll come back to that later. So I had coconut crabs on my list of organisms I wanted to make a video about someday, but they weren't high on the list. I didn't really know anything about them besides the fact that they were, 1, really big, and 2, ate dead things. And there were other animals that I was more familiar with that I thought would make better video topics. But as I was finishing up my last video about bobbit worms, I don't even know how, but I somehow stumbled across a paper about coconut crabs that left me speechless. I genuinely couldn't believe what I was reading and knew immediately that my next video had to be about coconut crabs. But I don't want to spoil anything, so let's put a pin here too and get the usual stuff out of the way first. Coconut crabs are part of the phylum Arthropoda, more specifically the subphylum Crustacea, more specifically the class Malacostraca, or as I like to call it, the mafia gang of the sea. Other malacostracans include the pistol shrimp and the mantis shrimp, and if you've seen my videos about these two, you know they would both make excellent hired goons for the mob. And honestly, coconut crabs would too, but put another pin in that. Coconut crabs are in the order Decapoda, and then the infraorder Anomura, which means coconut crabs are not technically crabs. In order to be considered a true crab, you have to be part of the infraorder of Brachyura. But I find this distinction to be very elitist, and as far as I'm concerned, coconut crabs will always be true crabs in my heart. Following that, they are part of the superfamily Paguroidea, which contains the hermit crabs, and put a pin in that as well. And then they're in the family, I don't know how to pronounce this word. Then finally, the genus Birgus and the species latro. They're mostly found on remote islands and coral atolls in the Indo-Pacific. And atolls, by the way, are ring-shaped islands or a collection of islets in a ring shape, or just a coral reef in the shape of a ring. And I don't really know where to mark them on my map because I don't think this map shows coral atolls, and I don't know which remote islands coconut crabs are found on. Well, Hawaii is a fairly remote set of islands. Maybe I can mark that? Do coconut crabs even show up in Hawaii? It looks like they do, but apparently not very often, because when one does show up, it's a big enough deal that it gets on the news. Good for you, big guy. Get your 15 minutes of fame. Hey y'all, editing Octopus Lady here. I managed to find some maps that actually correctly show where populations of coconut crabs have been found, so there you go. That's where coconut crabs live in the world. Anyway, back to the video. And in terms of how long they've been on this planet, I think they've been around for 39 million years. But trying to include this information in this video has been such a nightmare for 3 different reasons. 1, I got this number from this paper, and more specifically, from this divergence time chronogram, which is incredibly difficult to read, so I'm not super confident on how accurate 39 million years is. If I ever become, I don't know, queen of the scientists, then guess what, nerds? Every last one of you are taking graphic design classes because y'all are terrible at visually presenting information in a clear and straightforward way. 2, I couldn't find any photos of fossilized coconut crabs, so just like in my moray eel and clownfish videos, I had to spend a lot of time photoshopping this guy into a skeleton costume because I genuinely don't know what else to show here. And 3, since they're kinda around the same age as frogfish, moray eels, and saccoglossan slugs, I'm not sure where I should put coconut crabs on my fossil timeline thing. I don't know if they should go before this group or after or within it, so guess what? I'm giving into the chaos. Bam! That's where coconut crabs live now, and we are moving on. The most noticeable thing about coconut crabs is that they're really big. They're actually the largest land invertebrate in the world, weighing up to 4 kilograms and reaching a leg span of over 1 meter in length. And yes, they are a land invertebrate. Adult coconut crabs do not have gills and will drown should they end up submerged underwater. And one could argue that they therefore don't belong in my Alien Ocean series because they technically don't live in the ocean, but let's talk about their life cycle. So after a male and female coconut crab mate, the female carries all the now fertilized eggs on the underside of her body. Once they're ready to hatch, the female coconut crab will make her way down to the shoreline and release all her eggs into the water. This can be really dangerous though, because coconut crabs usually do this at high tide to maximize the chances of their eggs being carried out into the ocean. And friendly reminder, adult coconut crabs cannot breathe underwater. So there have been many reports of females being washed out to sea and drowning while attempting to release their eggs, which God, it really sucks sometimes to be the childbearing member of a species, doesn't it? Anyway, once the eggs hatch out in the ocean, the baby larval coconut crabs will float around for about a month as zooplankton and then settle onto the ocean floor. And remember that pin earlier where I mentioned that coconut crabs are part of the same superfamily as hermit crabs? Well, guess what? When they're still young, coconut crabs will live inside of empty gastropod shells, just like their cousins. Twinsies! Usually not long after, the coconut crab will make its transition onto land, losing its gills and becoming permanently terrestrial. So while coconut crabs don't technically live in the ocean, they're ocean adjacent. You know, and if I self-impose this rule where I can only make videos about organisms that only live in the ocean, then I'll never be able to make a video about penguins. And that would make me sad. Anyway, from what I understand, a coconut crab cannot make the move onto terra firma without a shell. Studies in labs have shown that when shellless young coconut crabs wander out of the lab-simulated ocean onto lab-simulated land, they usually die, mostly from desiccation. Desiccation, by the way, is the act of, like, really drying out something. Like, you know in the very first episode of SpongeBob SquarePants, when SpongeBob goes to visit Sandy in her tree dome and he doesn't realize that it's full of air and not water, but he's too polite to say anything, and then he and also Patrick eventually end up like this? Yeah, they almost died of desiccation there. It's a good thing Sandy found them when she did, otherwise this show would have ended after its first episode instead of eventually decaying into a husk of its former self, shuffling along like a zombie 25 years after it first aired. Why in the world are they still releasing new episodes in the year of our Lord 2024? For Neptune's sake, Nickelodeon, stop trying to squeeze every last dollar out of this poor sponge. Anyway, this isn't to say that the only reason coconut crabs wear shells is to protect them from getting all dried out. It also likely protects them from getting eaten by predators and protects them while they're making their way out of the water for the first time, as large waves and choppy surf could potentially crush or injure a coconut crab. They will continue to live in the shells of gastropods until they basically get forced out of them due to their size. There are some big ol' snails out there in the world, but there aren't many that are big enough to house the body of a fully grown coconut crab, especially when you're limited to land snails. This would be a problem if they were like their hermit crab cousins and had relatively thin shells, but that's not the case with these tanky boys. Their shells are so hard that, combined with their large size, they basically don't have to worry about predators. That said, it can get really hot out on these remote islands, and no amount of tough, thick exoskeleton is going to protect you from that. So coconut crabs like to dig themselves extensive underground burrows that they hide in during the hottest parts of the day. Now, with great size comes great responsibility. Wait, no, that's not right. With great size comes great claws. That's what I meant to say. Coconut crabs don't just have a big body, they have big claws. And these claws are powerful. Scientists went around Okinawa Island in Japan with a bite force measuring device and politely asked coconut crabs if they'd be so kind as to hold this device in their left claw for a brief period of time. Yes, they did ask each and every coconut crab they met. Don't look this up yourself, just trust me on this. I'm not lying to you because the thought of scientists politely speaking to coconut crabs brings me a lot of joy. All right? Alright. Anyway, after many measurements and some data calculations, they determined that coconut crab claws can potentially crush with forces of up to 3,300 newtons, depending on their size. 3,300 newtons is a lot. I know that the average person doesn't have a good frame of reference for newtons, but it's a lot. Quote, "This force greatly exceeds that in all other crustacean species that have been reported, as well as the bite force for the majority of modern terrestrial predators other than alligators." Corollary to this, there have been reports of people who've foolishly mishandled coconut crabs and as a result have gotten their fingers crushed. Coconut crabs likely have such powerful claws for a few different reasons. Remember those underground burrows I mentioned earlier? Well, some coconut crabs don't want to build their own, so they'll fight with conspecifics that already have. That's a word I haven't said in a while. I gotta remember to use it more often. It's a fun word to say. But yeah, having big, powerful claws can be helpful if you're constantly getting into fisticuffs over things like shelter and food. Or fisticlaws? Clawsticuffs? Whatever. Claws this strong are also really great at deterring predators, and they're great for getting these crabs food. Coconut crabs are not picky eaters, which is a good thing. If you're a picky eater, or I guess to sound more scientific, if you're an organism with a highly specialized diet, and you end up on a small remote island out in the middle of the ocean, you might be in a lot of trouble if there's no food on that island that's part of your diet. Anyway, a coconut crab favorite seems to be coconuts. Way to live up to your name, guys. These crabs are big and strong enough to bust open undamaged coconuts, although apparently it sometimes takes several days and several crabs to accomplish this, but they can do it. And fun fact, islands that have coconut groves on them tend to have almost twice as many coconut crabs compared to islands that don't. Other foods that coconut crabs have been seen eating include nuts, fruits, carrion, which is just a fancy way to say the rotting flesh of dead animals, and birds. Wait, birds? Birds? Like living birds? No, that can't be right. I must have misread something somewhere. Hold on one second.
A few scientific papers later.
Oh man, y'all. Okay, first off, skip ahead to this timestamp if you don't like to see or hear about harm being done to animals. Second off, coconut crabs eat birds, and not small ones either, not little finches or anything like that. They've been seen hunting and killing and eating red-footed boobies, which are almost as big as they are. And yes, I know, haha, booby is a funny word, but focus up here, people. It's about to get real. According to the 2017 article, Ruler of the Atoll, the world's largest land invertebrate, by Mark E. Laidre, quote, a daytime attack had been witnessed by M. Luckman, personal communication. An adult red-footed booby had landed near the entrance to a coconut crab's burrow. As the bird stood there, the crab slowly emerged from its underground lair, approaching the bird from behind. The crab then grabbed the bird by one leg and dragged it, struggling, back into its burrow. The bird never re-emerged. And it gets so much worse than that. What I'm about to read you is quite possibly the most violent thing I've ever talked about on my channel. From that same article, Laidre writes, on the 2nd of March, 2016, in the middle of the night, I observed a coconut crab attack and kill an adult red-footed booby. The booby had been sleeping on a low-lying branch less than a meter up the tree. The crab slowly climbed up and grabbed the booby's wing with its claw, breaking the bone and causing the booby to fall to the ground where it was unable to fly. The crab then approached the bird, grabbing and breaking its other wing. The booby struggled and pecked at the crab, but the crab retained its grip with both claws, kicking at the bird with its ambulatory legs. 5 more coconut crabs came to the site within 20 minutes, likely cueing in on the blood with their neurologically acute olfactory sense. The attacker responded by dragging the booby several meters away and then released its grip. As the booby lay paralyzed, the crabs fought, eventually tearing the bird apart over several hours, carrying it away and consuming it. I know. Let's all just take a deep breath. I know that was a lot, but wasn't that also kinda really, really, really cool? Do I sound like a serial killer if I say that? Because again, all I knew about coconut crabs was that they were big and that they were scavengers. So finding out that they're actually the personification of Mother Nature at her most ruthless was a revelation. This article caught me so off guard, it was like I got hit by a truck. While sitting quietly at my desk inside my top floor apartment, there are no words for how much this blindsided me. I don't get shocked very often when I'm researching my videos, and this truly shocked me. Like, jaw on the floor. What the fuck am I reading? This can't possibly be true. Oh my god, it actually is. I need to tell everyone levels of shock. So do you see why the second I was done reading this, I was like, coconut crabs, you're on deck. You're moving to the top of the rotation, you absolute nightmares. Let's go! Anyway, this article does point out that while coconut crabs hunting birds seems to be a fairly rare occurrence, they still might contribute to what's called a landscape of fear, which I think sounds really cool. It's basically the idea that predators can influence the behaviors of their prey, even when those predators very rarely attack that prey. This can affect the number and types of prey species living in a certain area, which can fundamentally shape what the ecology of that area is like. Laidre noted that on the island he was on, which obviously did have coconut crabs, the only birds that nested there were ones that nested in trees. When he explored nearby islands that had no coconut crabs, he found so many bird nests on the ground that he had to watch where he stepped, lest he accidentally crush an egg. Laidre suggested, quote, coconut crabs could act as ruler of the atoll. He said the title of the thing in the thing. For terrestrial communities, inducing fear, particularly in vulnerable ground nesting species. This is just a hypothesis though, because to test it properly, you'd likely need to to introduce coconut crabs onto islands where ground nesting birds live, and let's be real here, that would be a bloodbath. And most biologists aren't super keen on wiping out large numbers of birds and their eggs to see how that affects things like species abundance and community composition. Now, remember that pin way back in the beginning of the video about how these crabs are also called robber crabs? Well, that name might have something to do with the fact that these crabs have an incredible sense of smell. Obviously, studies show that their antennules, which are small antennae-looking things on their head, can detect odors in amounts as small as 0.1 nanograms. In case you're trying to conceptualize how much that is, that's 1/1,000,000th of a gram. Interestingly, the olfactory organs of coconut crabs are more similar to that of insects than that of their fellow crustaceans, which is an example of convergent evolution. Convergent evolution, by the way, is when organisms that are very different from each other end up evolving similar traits or behaviors, usually because these organisms are facing similar problems. The classic example is wings on bats, birds, and insects, but I want to talk about a more relevant example: the streamlined body shape of many fish, sharks, ichthyosaurs, and marine mammals. They all have what's called a fusiform body plan, where they're wider in the middle and tapered at the ends. They don't all have this body plan because their last common ancestor had it and passed it down to them. They all evolved it independently, likely because it makes it so much easier to move quickly through water. Marine crustaceans and terrestrial insects both have olfactory organs, but they're very different from each other because they have to detect odor molecules in very different mediums. When coconut crabs became terrestrial, their olfactory organs had to change so they could smell things in the air, and they could have evolved a completely new organ, but instead they ended up with one similar to insects. Convergent evolution! Anyway, coconut crabs are sometimes called robber crabs because they steal things from humans constantly. They've been seen stealing cooking pots, watches, sandals, bottles of whiskey, and all manner of utensils, including, oh shit, everyone watch out, he's got a knife! While we don't entirely know why they're always ganking stuff from people, we think it has something to do with their exceptional sense of smell. These crabs are able to detect even the smallest amount of food-related odors, so they might be thinking that that fork they just made off with is actually just food. Also, being creatures that live on remote islands who don't really worry about predators, it might be evolutionarily advantageous to just grab stuff and bring it home. Resources are notoriously sparse on remote islands, so anything new and novel might aid you in your survival. So remember earlier when I said that the class Malacostraca is like the mafia gang of the sea? I wasn't really joking when I said that, because I'm telling you, man, these Malacostracans can mess you up. This guy's got a left hook like One Punch Man. This guy is literally named after a gun, and this guy honestly sounds like the ideal hired goon. He's huge, he's strong, he commits petty theft, he carries around knives, and he won't hesitate to crush your fingers or break your wings. So if you owe money to any actual, literal loan sharks, I suggest you pay them back quick, otherwise it might not be long before this guy shows up at your front door. That said, if you want to watch more fascinating videos like this one, then let me introduce you to a couple of good fellas, some real wise guys, over on my streaming service, Nebula. Nebula is a streaming platform that's filled with fantastic educational content from some of your favorite creators, like Practical Engineering, Lab Muffin Beauty Science, and, well, me. And we're excited to announce that we're rolling out a whole new slate of Nebula Originals, which is content only found on Nebula. We've divided them up into two different categories, fact and fiction, and includes Bobby Broccoli's upcoming documentary, The Baltimore Scandal. But while you're waiting for that to come out, you can also check out Joe Scott's Nebula Original series, Mysteries of the Human Body. I usually don't find the science of humans to be that interesting, but man, when things go wrong inside of humans, that's when things get really interesting. Our ability to make amazing original content is directly because of support from our members, and if you'd like to become one, there's two ways. You can get a lifetime membership, which means you pay $300 once, and then you get access to Nebula forever. Seriously. Or you can sign up for a yearly subscription using my link at nebula.tv/theoctopuslady. Or you can use the link below where you'll get 40% off annual plans or as little as $2.50 a month. Or maybe you're already a member of Nebula but find yourself wishing you could give it as a gift to your friends and family. Well, do I have some good news for you. We've recently rolled out annual gift cards. Use the link gift.nebula.tv/theoctopuslady to give a year of Nebula to a loved one for just $30. And if they already already have a Nebula account, this is still a wonderful gift because it adds a whole nother year onto their balance. Regardless of which way you sign up, your support will directly help me and creators like me continue to make high quality and entertaining content. And with that, thanks for watching another episode of Alien Ocean. But before we go, I got a question for y'all. What should we name this newest member of the crustacean mafia gang, La Malacostraca? For the record, this guy's name is Nico, and this guy's name is Vinny, and the faceless mob boss of La Malacostraca is Tony, because I am so original with names. But yeah, this guy needs a name, so leave your suggestions for him down in the comments. Special thanks as always to all my patrons over on Patreon. Y'all are a huge reason why I'm able to make videos full time. I literally couldn't do it without you, so thank you, thank you, thank you. If you'd like to become a patron yourself, you can sign up over at patreon.com/theoctopuslady, where you can get early access to videos or your name in the beautiful credits. You can also follow me over on Twitter if you want to see me nerding out about marine biology on a more regular basis, and be sure to like, share, and subscribe, and all that. And until next time, this has been your friendly neighborhood octopus lady, reminding you that you don't have to go into space to find aliens. So I was showing this video to a friend of mine just to get some feedback on it, and he pointed out that when I haphazardly slapped coconut crabs onto my fossil timeline thing, I was doing the exact same thing I was yelling about just a few minutes before, about how scientists are terrible at presenting data in an easy-to-read way. And, he was right. So, my first decree as Queen of the Scientists is that all scientists need to take graphic design classes, myself included. We'll be in this together, y'all. That said, I'm sure it'll be a breeze, because there's no way that, like, color theory is that much harder to understand than the theory of evolution, right? Right?